Hello, I'm David Haynes, the director of the Heart Rhythm Center at William Beaumont University Hospital in Royal Oak, Michigan. I'm very pleased today to have a chance to talk to Amin Al-Ahmad from Texas Cardiac Arrhythmia. And the topic of the discussion is going to be the VASCADE MVP and how it interfaces with our workflow in the EP lab. Amin, why don't you take it away and tell us a little bit about what this device is for those unfamiliar and how it works into your workflow.
Well, thank you, David. It's really a pleasure to participate in this and to be part of this. Let me just start by telling you a little bit of the history of it, in the sense that we first got involved with this when they were planning a clinical study, and I still remember when they, the folks from the VASCADE company came and sort of said, "We have this new device. Can you try it out?" And we looked at it and kind of said, "I'm not really sure. Do we need it? Do we not need it? How does it work?" As soon as we started to use it, it was like incredible. We started to everybody loved it. It was a little bit unusual in the sense that, as a clinical study goes, we enrolled like crazy. I mean, it enrolled faster than any other study that I've been part of, and part of that is sort of a tribute to the fact that it's very easy to use, it's very simple, and it works really well.
Let me interrupt them. And so I don't know about you guys, but before we had this device, we were doing figure of 8 sutures at the end of our procedures. And of course, all these patients are heavily anticoagulated. We don't like to reverse anticoagulation. We don't have to. And so hemostasis has been a problem or a challenge. Figure of 8 was okay, but that was sometimes painful, sometimes associated with a prolonged bed rest. And then along comes this device.
Yeah, figure of 8 was something we tried first, and we had issues with that, with patient having pain, and then occasionally, they would forget to clip the suture on the nursing floor. So you end up with a patient calling you from home saying, "I've got the suture in my groin, what do I do?" Wow. It's really, it's egg on our face kind of thing. So when we started using the VASCADE device, the MVP, the light bulb went off that this is really a good device, and it transitioned our workflow, and it works exceptionally well. So, hemostasis times dropped, and bed rest times dropped, and that's important because one of the biggest complaints we used to have with AFib ablation was bed rest. Having to lay flat in bed for 4 to 6 hours post ablation just is not comfortable, and patients end up requiring a fair amount of pain medications, and oftentimes in men, it's difficult for them to if they have to pee or they have to urinate, it's very difficult for them to do that. So,
right. And 4 to 6 hours if you're lucky, right?
Correct.
Often they would have a little rebleed. That would mean pull out the sandbags. I mean, groin management turned into a big part of what happened throughout the evening after the procedure.
Yeah, that's very true. And it was a big dissatisfier for our patients. That's absolutely correct.
Yeah.
So with the device, what we found, and as we participated in the early studies, was that we were able to get our bed rest time down to 2 hours or less, and our patient satisfaction essentially, went sky high. Patients were very happy about it, and it became our standard of care, so that we essentially use this for all of our groin access sites and all of our ablation procedures.
Gosh, I can't remember the last time we pulled the sandbag off the shelf, which is really, really gratifying for everybody.
Now, just by way of comparison, what we used to do was we would send the patient to the PACU with the long sheath in the body, just pulled back, and we would have to send somebody from the EP lab down to the PACU to check the ACT And then once the ACT was adequately lowered, they would pull and hold pressure. So this is an individual that otherwise could be doing other things. For example, restocking the room, helping turn around, all these things, that now is stuck holding a groin for 10 or 15 minutes, this groin, that groin, and essentially that becomes their job. And so this allowed us actually, by doing this, to free up an individual that we could now use for other things.
So now you've got a happy patient. They're out of bed after 2 hours. And what? How does that change your workflow?
Yeah, so we looked a lot at workflow issues, because I think that it does allow some changes of workflow. And the primary one was it allowed for faster turnaround time. And really that was because we had that extra person who could get back to the lab, or didn't have to spend all the time holding the groin. What's interesting is I remember, in other EP labs that I've worked at, the paradigm was that they would stay in the lab until their ACT was low, and then they would pull in the lab, which takes up a lot of lab time. There's still labs that do that, I think. And so it's another thing where if that's the paradigm that people use, then I have to say closing the groin makes a whole lot more sense, because you can get that patient off the table quickly and turn around the room and get another patient going.
Okay, so let's be real. This sounds amazing, but I've always said when things sound too good to be true. So what's the catch?
Yeah, there's always a catch, right? So there's, cost is the issue, right? So the device costs money. And so does that make sense financially for the hospital? That's where I think some hospitals have a little bit of pushback. But I would argue that they're looking at it the wrong way. I would argue that if you can improve patient satisfaction and you can free up lab time, the economic benefits there. In fact, there's been an economic analysis of this. I don't believe it's been published, but it does support that you can save money by doing this, or at least break even while doing this. So you're not really hurting yourself, your bottom line. One of the things we've started to do is we've trained our techs actually to use the ultrasound to get a longitudinal view of the vein, and because they deploy the VASCADE closure device for us typically. So when you get a longitudinal view of the vein, you can actually see the disc pull up on the underside, of the vein. And then that you're right there, and you can confirm it visually before you deploy.
Well, I have really enjoyed our conversation today. Dr. Amin Al-Ahmad from Texas Cardiac Arrhythmia. I'm David Haynes from William Beaumont University Hospital, and we hope you have picked up some tips from our discussion today. Amin, thank you very much.
Thank you, David. It's a pleasure. Thank you so much.